All right, so YouTube is saying I'm live. 5 minutes early, but no worries. We can just relax and get started. How are you all doing today? I hope you're doing well. It has been way too long. So, um, yeah, I hope you're all well. Man, it's been such a while since I've streamed. It's a little weird. I've been teaching and stuff a lot online, but yeah, like I said, it's been a while since we've done this. So I hope you're all well. Um, I see some questions, some things might be popping in. So if you have any questions, it's 5-2, so we'll do 5 minutes of questions and stuff before I dive into breakdowns and other things. I'm happy. Yeah. So let's see. Somebody has been asking. Have I tried Fusion or the free version inside of Resolve? I actually have a Resolve Studio Pro Studio, whatever it's called, dongle thingy in my computer. I've been using it quite a bit lately just to do editing, and I've done used a little bit of Fusion here and there. I've used it in the past. It's quite nice. Um, but I still just use the Blender compositor for most stuff. So unless I want to do like maybe optical flow kind of things or the things that might be interesting to use Fusion with. But generally, mostly Blender compositor still. Resolve a lot though for editing and just, yeah. I mean, I used to use Blender most of the time for that stuff. And it's still fine for simple things, but yeah, Resolve is just so fast to render and that kind of thing. So that's nice. Um, Let's see, a lot of people saying hi. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining. Yeah, sorry if you see me like staring down here. It's because I've got a screen with all the chat and everything going on. So cool, cool, cool. So let's see. Only got an hour till uni starts. Got to watch the Well, the video will be up, so don't worry about it. You'll be able to watch this after. So it's all good. All right, so with that said, maybe let's jump into some stuff. I'm just gonna grab like Instagram or whatever and just go over some of the stuff that I've done lately, and maybe we can talk about it. That might be interesting. Maybe just go to my profile rather. Let's see. Yeah, definitely going to talk about the thing I posted earlier and some of the other ones like these animations that we're using like geometry nodes and stuff, and yeah, they're a lot of fun. So we can definitely talk about that. Um, and these are actually a very similar technique. So I guess we'll be talking about geometry nodes a lot today. I think somebody asked about this as well. Um, I don't mind opening up the file. It's been a while since I made this, so I'll be a little bit hazy on the details. And I think to finish off, maybe these could be fun as well to kind of talk about a little bit. So we'll see. I have, I'd say, roughly 2 hours or so to talk about stuff. So we'll see. And if you have any questions, I'll just kind of be hanging out and yeah, and answering stuff, I guess. So let's see. Before we jump in, a few more. Greetings from Norway. Hello. Greetings from Belgium back. um, dun, dun, dun. What is the use case for a 3990X? 3990X in my case. Simulation for yeah, some stuff uses a lot of cores, like the Fluid Sim uses a lot of cores, which is nice. Rendering, anything that just doesn't fit on in VRAM, especially when you start using displacement and things. I still tend to render a lot of stuff on CPU as well. Um, Other things, yeah, just generally rendering whatever is like decently multi-threaded, really. There's always it's good to be able to fall back on just CPU with a lot of RAM, which is nice. Um, if I tried the particle nodes branch that got postponed, yeah, once or twice I tried it. It was okay. I'm a little bit sad that the old particle system isn't getting any love anymore now that they've switched over to doing geometry nodes, because that definitely needs a little bit of, yeah, a little bit of love here and there. There's some bugs that seem to be creeping in, and I hope at least they look at it a little bit in the future. But I haven't been submitting bug reports as much as I used to, which is obviously my own fault as well. So, but I did try it. It's interesting. I think the UI needed a lot of work still. But we'll see. I mean, with geometry nodes now, I think they're getting a lot of practice in to tackle, I guess, more complex stuff. So that'll be cool. Um, well, I'll talk about the new point cloud stuff too. Yeah, sure. If there's time, I'm happy to. I'm happy to. So maybe let's start with these really quick and then move up to the newer stuff. Then that way, yeah, we do them somewhat chronologically, and that makes my life a little bit easier. So these are kind of cool. Let's see. And actually, are they on? No, I haven't. I think I posted them on ArtStation or Behance. Oh, let's see if I'm still logged in. I am not. I can show them slightly larger quality. Otherwise, I would have to go hunting for them the whole time in my files, and that'll take a little bit longer. So these are kind of fun. These are actually a bit simpler than you might think to create. So, and these were some like tests and stuff. So yeah, if you don't know, I'm on ArtStation and Behance as well, and generally I post like higher resolution stuff there. So if you want to see something that's super like a bit more higher quality, I tend to post them like in batches of a few months. I'll wait and then I'll post more stuff. So you can always look at them. Or honestly, the best trick is if you look at all the NFT stuff. If it's good for anything really, even if you're not that into the whole NFT thing. Well, it can be a little slow. Typical when I want to show something, it's going to take forever. Let's see if I can manage assets here. The cool thing about these, you can see how they render sort of quite slowly. Well, the reason for that is if you just grab any one of these specifically, this is a video, of course, and let's just grab this one just for the sake of it, because I don't think the fields, I think they were still on another platform. But if you look at the image in a new tab, you'll actually see that they're like the 8K version that comes out of Blender that I render out. So you can actually watch it, look at them in the highest possible quality. So that's kind of an advantage. I like that the high resolution versions are out there. That way, even if people don't want to buy them or they don't have the money or the interest to buy them, you could still get a pretty high quality print from the files that I post here. So that's pretty cool. And then you can get it on your own dime. And of course, if you want a print that's signed or whatever, you can always just email me and that kind of thing. But yeah, just a little trick there to show you is if you want to look at like the high resolution version. Unfortunately, it only works for images. It doesn't work for animations. I wish I could post like the full 4K version. Like if you look at these, and I'm jumping all over the place a little bit, but I just posted this one earlier today, so I know exactly where it is. Like it's really big, and I don't know if compression will absolutely destroy it, but we'll see. But this is actually, and let me just mute this for a second. There we go, because it's driving me a little nuts. As you can see, it's actually 4K by 3K. So yeah, it would be great to find a way somehow to at some point post this in full resolution, because there's so much detail, so much fun. Because like I have a like a bigger version of this as well, like a print version. Come on. Is this gonna load or is it just gonna crash? I think it might load. It'll just take a second. I don't know what's going on though. It's having a hard time. Oh, it's 16K, so it probably won't load in this. It has a hard time with really large images. So maybe let's try that. See if that would possibly work. Hey, it does. All right, give me a second here. So you can see, like, if I really go 1-to-1, you can see just the sheer amount of detail that's in the mesh and stuff. It's really cool. These are a lot of fun to make. I could make like 100 of them, but I don't want to like repeat myself too much. But yeah, you can see all the cool stuff going on. So, all right, so small tangent, but let's get back to the thing here, and then I'll look at some questions after I've done this set. So these, I actually sort of create one from scratch. I kind of remember how I did it. It's been a while, but let's see if we can do it anyway. So really, all this is let's say, let's do a circle or maybe a cube or plane. Let's just do a plane. So let's see if this would work. So I inset them. Oh, and I've already made a mistake. Something like that. Repeat it a couple of times. There we go. And then I just grab the edges. And really the trick to these is that it's a hair system, which is kind of nice. And then I invert. And actually what I want to do is, and I messed up already. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. It's not, I didn't sleep all that well last night. There we go. So I'm just going to do this very quickly and deselect this one, invert, and delete the faces. And now you're left with this like tiny framework, and I probably would make them a little bit smaller even. There we go. And now I'm in object mode, and I'm just going to apply all the transforms. So I haven't, yeah, so it just kind of works. So these are even a little bit big still, so let's see if we can scale them down. So will it work? No, that's okay. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Normally I would make these a little bit thinner, even that they're almost like overlapping, but it's no big deal. The idea behind it will become clear. So let's see. Really, like I said, it's just a hair system. And let's bring down the size a little bit, bring the segments up. I'm not going to bring them up too high, just so you can see what's going on. And then it's a case of throwing in a force field, and not a force field, a turbulence force rather. And if you set your segments up high enough of the hairs, you get like a lot of like wavy stuff because the force is affecting them. So now you can just kind of almost real time try and make an interesting shape. And like if I really want to copy myself here, and just move it up, move this back a little bit, and then I'm just going to add a light. Loading render kernels, seriously. It's okay though. Just move this up a little bit. Just going to set up the scene so we can see kind of what we're looking at. Maybe set up a camera real quick, just to have something similar. And let me know, because I think I'm encoding on the GPU, so let me know if the stream starts crapping out when I start rendering. Then I don't know if I could switch it over to CPU, but I might just switch over the render to CPU instead then, and we'll have less issues. Let me just look at what I'm doing here. Just a 2K image is fine. Square. This always takes a few minutes. I don't know why. I don't think I updated my drivers, and nah, doesn't matter. We'll give it a second here. And it'll look kind of interesting. Maybe I'll answer some questions while that's going on. So a lot of people saying hi. London, Switzerland, Germany, another Germany, Austria. Okay, cool. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Pardon me if I sound rude, but how do you pronounce your name? Sinave. Yes, that's my last name. It's just Sinave. It's okay. It's a rather Belgian name. So it can be weird to pronounce in, yeah, in different languages. So, what distro am I running? I am running Void Linux. Yeah, I really like it. It's cool. Ooh, hello from Kenya. Cool. Hello. So, somebody has a question about motion graphics and they're new to 3D. So I'll continue after this question. I enjoy using Blender, but people tell me that if I want to work in the motion graphics industry, I should learn Cinema 4D. It's a hard one. A lot of people in the motion graphics industry use Cinema 4D, so it can't hurt to know it. Yeah, at the end of the day, if your client doesn't care and you're just delivering final resolution stuff, then I don't really see why you would have to learn one over the other. That being said, for like simple motion graphics stuff, there's definitely some merit to learning Cinema 4D because it is just very optimized for that kind of thing. It works pretty well with the Adobe suite as well if you use that for post-production. So it's good. I mean, try it out, I would say. I'm sure they have a trial. I hope they do. That would be sad if they didn't. But yeah, try it out. If you like it, a lot of the knowledge that you procure within Blender is definitely applicable to Cinema 4D as well. So I wouldn't worry about any lost knowledge there. Um, I'm just setting these up so you can see the hairs are coming up. And you can just kind of mess with the diameter here to make them bigger or smaller. But really, you can already see that image taking place. I think at this point, I was actually using a little bit of ambient occlusion just to bring up the background and to get more of a yeah, flatter sort of look. Just a little bit, just to kind of fill up yeah, those darker areas a little bit. Maybe bring this up a little bit more, but we'll see. You can sort of see it converging fairly quick. And then really the main thing we want to do is in the material. So in the shader editor, where all the magic is going to happen is the hair info node. And this is really cool because you can tell it, is it a hair strand, yes or no? Obviously, these are all going to be white because white means yes, it's a strand. But you have things like the intercept, which will give you a sort of black to white gradient from the beginning to the end of the hair, which is really nice. But the main one I like to use is the random. And you can kind of use that then to color a few of them a little bit of a different color, and then you throw them in here and maybe bring the roughness down a little bit to something like 0.2 or whatever. You're going to get a little bit of a sheen on this hair. It doesn't have to be, like perfect. And really the most time spent for these is just moving the turbulence around until I get something that I kind of like that looks good. So it took me, I think this one took me like I want to say an hour and a half of just moving the turbulence around and looking at sort of the final shape. And it's boring work, but it is kind of fun because if I look at the viewport here and we move this around, you'll see the hair shape changes as I move the turbulence around. And it really is just a case of looking at, where I get an interesting sort of look, or in this case, you can change the size of the turbulence. So you get like these bigger sort of flows. And you can see just by experimenting with this, you get so many interesting forms and shapes. Like this one has a really nice flow sort of from left to right. So you could try and move the turbulence over a little bit to see if you can't, and maybe rotate a little bit to see if there's any way you can have it go from like one edge to the other. But you can see as I move these around, you get all these sort of infinite variations. I can bring the size back down, I can move it around. So really it's just more a case of setting up this somewhat simple scene and then just playing around with the settings, maybe adding a second turbulence. For example, I'm just going to copy this one and maybe bring the strength down and the size way down. So now you've got like your main turbulence, which is creating the shape, and then the smaller turbulence, which is sort of giving you all these little details and sort of perturbing it a little bit as you wish. So that's cool. That's fun. So I'm gonna skip through this one fairly quickly because I think with what I've shown you, it's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah, experiment this stuff like hair and what you would call it, forces is really fun in Blender. So it's really great to mess with. So let's just go for a new one. So let's see what is up next, what we're looking at. So this one, I'll be honest, I'll have a quick look at it, but it's been a while since I created it. Man. Let's see if I can even open the file. That'll probably be quicker because it's been, like I said, a hot minute, as people are saying nowadays. So V4 will probably be the final one. So let's have a look at the different parts. So first of all, if you do anything like tunnel-like that you want to loop, there's these things called collection instances. And you can basically instance anything, any collection that you've created. So basically, I create all of my different elements of the loop inside one collection, and then I instance that collection multiple times. It's really nice because it allows you to work pretty efficiently. You can see this stuff is getting pretty slow. So let's break it down as quickly as I can because I want to get to some of the newer stuff because I think a lot of people are wanting to hear about geometry nodes and that kind of thing. So. So first of all, these grid lines, I created these using my own script, which you can find on GitHub. I'll just show you real quick. Yeah, okay. So thank you, GitHub, for showing all my stuff. Yay, gotta love streaming, right? So let's see. Random grid. It's just a script that creates these random curved lines. Play with it. It's okay. Don't expect any wonders, but it's a one-click solution to create these like sort of technical looking grids. So you can create like width, height, and then kind of figure out what you want. Oh, there it is. It's installed. So here you can actually see it. Unfortunately, my Python skills aren't up to chops to be able to change them after the fact. So once you click create random grid lines, that's it. You can't really mess with it after the fact. But basically, that's how most of these have been created. And then if you look at the shader, really the best trick to show you is this. Yeah, I just use this PNG gradient and then I animate the location. But if you use a multiply, so you multiply this gradient by X amount of times you want it to repeat, and you add a modulo after that, basically what it's going to do is it's going to sort of clamp it and repeat the same texture multiple times over your line. And because the line uses automatic UVs, if you then animate it from 0 to 1 on the x-axis, it'll loop perfectly, and you'll have like all these looping lines that sort of come through. And then I'm just mixing it with like an emission shader, mixing it with like a metal shader, or in some cases a transparent shader. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's just a simple trick, but like I said, you animate x from 0 to 1. You pipe this gradient.png is really just where are we? Wow, totally lost my train of thought there. Image editor, if you look at gradient.png, it is like the most simple gradient. The reason I use a PNG is so I know I can just angle it the way I want, use the UVs, and be done with it, and not have to like figure out how to orient this and then animate it. Sometimes it takes too long. Yeah, and then pipe it into a multiply. In the multiply, set it to how many times basically you want it to multiply. So then let's say if I set this to 10, then if you put the modulo after that, it's just going to repeat the same texture 10 times, which is really nice. It's a cool little trick, and then color ramp it to get like a little fading edge. But I don't really want to talk about those too much. Really, the meat and potatoes of this stuff is just a particle system again. So it's like there's like a main block here, which you can see. And I have no idea why these are so subdivided, but probably they're subdivided for no reason at all. There you go. So there's just two parts. It's a glass part and then like a light part. But then when you put it in between these other particles, really the particles are just, if I show you real quick, turn this off and let's go back here. Show me the particles. There we go. So these particles are just, yeah, simple sort of cubes or elongated cubes, I guess. I can't think of the word now. Like I said, I'm a little tired. But this is kind of cool. And then you could throw them all in there into this particle system, and basically you get like a really interesting effect. Some of them have a little bit of red light and stuff on them. I know I'm glossing over this quite a bit. It's not because I don't want to show it. It's just because I want to be able to show a lot of stuff today because we have some catching up to do, obviously. So I'm going to turn those off for a second, and here we go. So if we just look at these, you can see these are just a particle system on top, but because you have all these shapes that are somewhat similar, you get a really interesting looking, interesting looking base shape. And then when you let it render a little bit, you can see there's a texture on there. I think it's like a brick texture or something that just has dots, or a checker texture mixed with a brick texture, something like that. So it's pretty cool. But it's all about like creating these things, and then when you put it all together, and I know this is going to render fairly slow because I think I've got two particle systems here. One with like really long, unless I'm wrong, and I'm still in Yeah. So there's one with like really big particles and then one with smaller ones. So you get like these bigger, fatter blocks around the edges, and then you get these really long, thin ones towards the sides, and that sort of links them up. And then because you have that light in the middle with those blocks, those glass blocks that have light emitting, it's going to refract all around, and then there's like a final sort of, if we zoom out a little bit, we can see anything. So this, you can see there's two cubes around the side, and sort of the outer one is really just to be able to block it off. So when you use a mist pass or something like that, you don't get these really white things at the parts where there's like alpha. So if you put a black cube around it, then your mist pass will sort of follow your tunnel a little bit. And then the other one is just like two brick textures or something mixed together just to get some more red light in there. And that accentuates the red of the blocks. But you can see absolute nightmare to render. It took quite a while to render this one. So, but yeah, that's the gist of it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like you just, I really like building sort of stuff from simple pieces and try to make it as complex as possible without too many steps because I like to work fairly quick. I mean, most of you that have been around and seen some of these streams will know that, obviously. That's a very quick overview on that one. So let's see what else is next. And maybe I should answer some questions first before we move on. Yes, so then we get to these, and they're all kind of connected anyway. So that's pretty cool, and I could talk about those, which is fun. And that's geometry notes. It's going to take a while, so I'll answer some questions first, and then we'll dive into that and talk about it. So, what do I think about NFTs? They're interesting. We'll see where they go. I switched from super rare to Hicket Nunk for the time being, because of the whole environmental thing. Um, I still think it's a little bit overblown, and I know Ethereum are working on making it better. But then again, there are alternatives, so I figured I'd try that out, and actually quite like Hicket Nunk because it's open to anyone, and I feel like there's a lot of similar artists and a lot of people that I really like, artists that I really like on there, so that's cool. Um, yeah, but we'll see. But I might go back to super rare after a while. I'm not sure, but yeah. Mm-mm-mm-mm. So there's some more discussion about Cinema 4D. Yeah, I think Houdini, if you want to have like the full-on experience, Houdini is even better, but it's harder to get into. I think Cinema 4D strikes a really nice balance when you're learning in usability and options, and I think that's why it shines so much within that area because it's actually easy enough to pick up and make really impressive stuff with. But Houdini is also extremely cool. Um, so render times, I'm just gonna skip over some stuff here. Check out Vectron and Blender Octane. Yeah, it's like to do, I saw people doing fractals and stuff with it. It looks pretty interesting, but um, I haven't downloaded or anything yet, and it's been a while. Greetings from Belgium. Aha, I think I see somebody there that I know. um, Regarding the prints, you sell them via ArtStation. There are some works on ArtStation for prints. I should really update it. I might actually do that this week if I find the time. So you can get some there. It hasn't been updated in a while, and if you want a print like that's signed and stuff, then you can always email me directly. But they get a fair bit more expensive. But then I go to print them and stuff, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's up to you what you prefer, obviously. So will the stream be available to watch after? Yes, they're always available. So did you set up volumetrics in that scene, or is it just an area light with that hero object? It was just an area light. That's it. No volumetrics, and a black and a white background, and that's it. So hair deserves more credit. Yeah, it is really awesome. How heavy is a clone on the hair? Do you ever use it? Yeah, I've used it for many years. I mean, it works well enough. Obviously, you don't have to throw in like a 3 million polygon object to clone, but for most things, it's actually really good. I was always really impressed with how well it works. Um, How do you manage cycles noise, especially on your huge high-res renders? Just wait. Up the samples and wait. That's really all you can do. Um, Sometimes I might use the denoiser, but I don't like it as much because yeah, it gets smudgy, and especially you lose a lot of fine detail. And if you're rendering something at like 8 or 16K to have a lot of fine detail and then it disappears because of the denoising, it feels kind of weird. So generally, there's probably still a fair amount of noise in some of these. So if I open that same file that I was talking about earlier, that's sort of a nice segue into getting them there. So that's still, let's see. Here's a JPEG version. I don't know if it's the full 16K, but it'll give you an idea. It is cool. Let this load for a second. I don't know if this application will be able to handle it though, because it is struggling. Okay, so if you look closely, this one doesn't have all that much noise. Like there's still a little bit of noise in there. I generally add some sharpening and softening at the end of every render, and that takes care of a lot of the really small stuff. And it makes it look a little bit like yeah, like a picture almost. So speed through these a little bit. Doxed by GitHub. Yeah, I know, right? Bastards. um, am I using any render farm? No, I just render everything on this machine right here, usually overnight. Which Blender version am I using? 3.0 alpha at the moment, because I know then everything is going to work. And if yes, the optics denoiser or the composite node, it varies. Sometimes I switch between the two. I generally, when I do denoise stuff, especially if they're animations, what I'll do is I'll mix the denoised version with the noisy version, just so you get some of those details back, so it's not all smudgy and weird. So yeah, we'll see. Stupid question. Is there a way you would recommend for finding getting jobs in motion design? Oh man, I'm the worst person to ask because stuff just sort of comes my way and I don't really actively search for things. But like talk to other people that are doing similar things and maybe present yourself as somebody who could do extra stuff. So, but I'm going to keep looking at the questions, but I am going to start getting into this geometry node stuff because let's be honest, we're all here for the geometry nodes. All right, so I'm going to turn on wireframes so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. And I hope this will show okay in the stream, but yeah, it is what it is. So a lot of the stuff that I've been doing recently is based on like one technique that I keep repeating because it's so much fun. And it's easy enough to set up with geometry nodes. So I'm just going to add a geometry node editor and add them in here. So as most of you probably know, geometry nodes is, oh yeah, and I have a little bit of an announcement. If you're like confused by everything I'm doing, don't worry about it too much. I am going to do a update for the course, for the real-time motion graphics course, a free update. Don't ask me when. I'm trying to plan it in the next couple weeks/months. I'm going to do a free update. I'm hoping to do another hour or two, maybe 3 of content. Don't hold me to that though. It'll really depend. But like what's been updated since the course came out, just some interesting things within Blender that are good to know, and then some geometry nodes stuff as well, sort of a geometry nodes kickstart and my sort of take on it. And there's a lot of content that's really good out there already. So if you want to start learning it, just start learning it. I'm gonna like talk about all the weird stuff that I like doing with it and why I think it's interesting. So, but I'll try and make it as accessible as possible for everyone. So, what are we going to do? So we've got these two nodes over here, input and output. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna create another mesh, and in our case, let's create a cone with some vertices, and I'm gonna use this one as a instance object. So I'm just going to hide it in the viewport so you can't see it, but it's still available in the scene. So first thing we're going to do is add a point distribute node. And this is going to distribute points on the plane. The plane is going to disappear, but we're going to get like a nice little preview of the points. Now, one thing that has been added in 2.93, it's going to be released soon, this week, next week. I can't remember. I think it's going to be pretty soon. It's this spreadsheet. And man, if you haven't used this spreadsheet yet, get used to using this because this is where all of the magic happens. It's really, really great. Because you can actually get, yeah, I know it sounds weird, right? Talking about a spreadsheet in a 3D application, but this is really, really good. Before in 2.92, you didn't have this, and it was really frustrating to work because you couldn't see what exactly was going on in the background. So here you can see I've put this point distribute in, and now all this stuff has happened. It's populated all these points, and you can actually see I'm looking at the point cloud that I've just created, and I'm looking at all the different values for the point. You can see we have the position value, we've got the radius, we've got the crease value, material index ID, normals, rotations, UV map, shade smooth, all that kind of stuff, which is really, really nice because we can use a lot of these things. And this is some of the stuff that I'll be covering in the course as well. But really what I want to do is I just want to use the attribute proximity node. And what this is going to do, if we go back and set this to target and just set this to dist, it's going to create a new variable called distance. And then in the mesh, I'm going to look at vertices. And you'll see right now, and this is why this freaking spreadsheet is so great, I'm trying to calculate the distance from each point over the points of the mesh. And you can see immediately why it's not working, right? I created this new sort of value, whatever you want to call it, to store, and you can see the distance is infinite. What does it mean? It can't find the distance of those points, and it helps you to debug it, which is great because now what I forgot to do is set my attribute proximity to points. So now what's going to happen is now this gets filled in, and you can see, all right, it's calculating those points. If you wanted to see a preview of it, you could even do you could just call a vertex group dist, which is really cool. And then you could see it in weight paint. The only thing is that weight paint, it can't store any negative values, for example. So if you wanted to do something with a negative value, you'd want one of those I guess, vertex weight sort of things in there. But you can see we can even use this as a vertex weight, which, you know, if you know anything that I like doing, you'll know that now this is really cool because we can start displacing it just using this distance. And then if we go back to our geometry nodes and we actually instance that, that thing that I created earlier and not there, I'm going to cut this off and put it in here. And we put in the cones. Now, if I just say I want points in here and I'm going to join these two just so we can see what we're doing. So I really like this new node that's sort of like this. So now you can kind of see what's going on. So I've put in some cones onto those points. What I'm going to do is scale them down. And this is where all this stuff starts coming in. Like all these attributes, a lot of this stuff is what you'll end up using anyway. So I'm just going to set attribute math. I'm going to set the scale of the points, or the scale of these instances, and I'm going to multiply that just by a float value and push that back into the scale. And why it won't do it, I don't know. There we go. And now we actually have a little control to scale our points. But what I really wanted to show you is, and I think this is a bug because it's not showing up anymore. The distance is in there, but it's not putting it in because I've set this to points, and that makes sense. So why isn't it working? So you see, I'm still figuring this stuff out. The distance is correct. I'm just not seeing it in the thing. And I've noticed this. Yeah, if you put a modifier after, I think this might be a bug, but I'm not sure. I'd have to investigate further. If you put a modifier after, it tends to wipe stuff, wipe certain data, which is kind of weird because it shouldn't do that. But yeah, you could now either build your own displace, but you could have like the points sort of inset into the mesh and have it push out between the points using that distance. And that's the idea behind it anyway. Now, what I'm trying to show is that technique that I was using for creating those really weird meshes. So it started, and you can sort of follow along. It started with this one where I was getting those interesting looking patterns. And then I'd started mapping it onto like 3D geometry and stuff. And then after a while, you got to do a face. And I think they're on ArtStation. I hope they are. I hope they've uploaded those already. Yes, awesome. And then you can see it starts getting really interesting once you start mapping it onto complex geometry with different base shapes. And so for this one, I'm using this cone. And really what I want to do is, rather than join these up, I'm just going to delete this. I have this point instance, which I really like, and I'm going to use that to calculate a new distance. Only what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomize the scale. So attribute randomize, set the attribute to scale. And now we have a 0 to 1 slider. So from 0.01 to 0.1 or something like that. There we go. And we have a bunch of them. And now we can pipe this into the target. And don't worry if you're like, oh my God, this is like, I have no idea what you're doing. It took me a while to figure this out. I just want to show you how it's done so you can kind of start understanding how geometry nodes is very, very interesting. So now we've got this distance value, which you can use for all kinds of stuff. But I found that if you put the instances into the position, and let's say faces, is this no longer going to work? That would be hilarious. Oh no, into the target. Sorry, my bad. I'm going to throw this in the target. So we're still targeting all the individual points of this plane to somewhere, to all these individual instances. So the ones that I created. And rather than putting it in there, if you just use position, now what it's going to do, and remember I set this to faces, so I changed it from points to faces. What it's going to do is going to try and map all of the existing sort of mesh of that plane to the closest face of those cones, which makes for really interesting and weird geometry. But the cool thing is that cone is still editable. So if I now add something like a solidify modifier to it and just thicken it up a little bit, and I'm going to add some more, let's see, I'm going to add some more subdivisions to this, so you could subdivide it within geometry nodes. Maybe 3 subdivisions. It won't be real time, but you can see now I've added a solidify modifier to the cone. You can see as I change this, this changes sort of the layout of the mesh, and you get these geometric patterns within geometric patterns. And if you look at these shapes, you can start seeing, if you look at this face, for example, you can actually start seeing, I use sort of an icosphere for this one. I can't remember exactly what I used for this one, but I think something triangular as well. And here you can see I used a hexagonal icosphere type thing. Is it a dodecahedron? I don't know. I can't remember all the names of those shapes. With some stuff, and you can see that sort of happening. You see all those shapes showing up again the same way they show up here. And I think I added like a double solidify to begin with. So let's make this one a little bit bigger. And I'll start answering questions in a little bit because I'm sure there's a lot going on. I can see it kind of in the corner of my eye. And then we can just double up on that solidify, make this one a little bit smaller. And now you get all these really cool and interesting edges. And once again, like I'm not trying to do anything specific with geometry nodes. I'm just trying to figure out cool and interesting ways to destroy a mesh, really. I am always feel like. And then once they get a little bit bigger and they start overlapping, you can start seeing how crazy interesting these patterns become. And the cool thing is you can apply this to anything because it's just a modifier. So if we then start looking at some of the other files, and don't forget, like these are all pointing in the same direction, we could now also randomize. Is there a vector randomize? Oh yeah, I just have to set it to vector. So if I now add another randomize, and instead of float, I'm going to use a vector, because we know the point cloud is not showing me the point cloud. So if I activate this here, you can see each one of these has a rotation. And the rotation is in radians, so you kind of have to do a little bit of math. But really what you could do by setting this to vector, the reason I set this to vector is the rotation has 3, an x, a y, and a z axis. So that means it's a vector instead of a float. A float is something like this crease or this distance, which is just a singular number. a vector is something that has 3 values inside of it. So now you can see if I just grab rotation and let's see, set these to 3 or something like that. Now they're all going to be randomly rotated. And this, yeah, the more subdivision levels you have, the cooler this looks. So it's one of those ram killing type things. But you can see as I start rotating these, now I get this super crazy geometry and things start getting really, really interesting. And then it's just a case of throwing a wireframe modifier on top and hoping that not everything crashes. So I'm just going to save this just in case, because I'm not convinced this is going to, I'm not 100% convinced this isn't going to crash. So let's just call this untitled. That's fine. And throw a wireframe on top, and we'll probably have to wait for that. So I'll answer some questions a little bit. Oh, wow, that did it a lot quicker than I thought. We have to turn off even, because even is the devil when you have weird geometry and you're trying to wireframe it. There we go. And let me just turn off things here. And then I really like the relative thickness, because then it's going to base the thickness of the individual edges depending on the size. So you can push this up a little bit, and then the longer ones will become a little bit thicker, and the smaller ones, yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about this before, but it just gives you a really cool and interesting looking mesh. So there you go. And the cool thing is, because this is geometry nodes, you just have this thing. So if I now very quickly create maybe like a person or something like that, let's see if I have anything. I have MBLab installed, so I'm just looking at the tools. I always forget where it is. Utilities, there we go. The human male, let's import the template. So now if we just grab this guy, and I'm just going to delete a whole bunch of edges so it doesn't take too long. There we go, faces, and then up here maybe, and up here. That one, faces, and then we can select this, and the eyes. We don't want to forget the eyes. Invert everything, delete them all out, and now we're just left with this dude. Now what we could do is just add a geometry nodes modifier and add that first one that we created, and it's going to do all the work for us. But you can see it's starting to distort this guy in really interesting ways. And I'm going to have to mess with my scale a little bit to make sure that I have enough of these things set up. And you can always kind of look at the points to make sure. So in this case, I would probably have to up the density a little bit just to make it work. And it's really fun because you can very easily and quickly iterate, and you can see how interesting this is starting to get. And I think I might want to bring them down a little bit. There we go. And it's really just a case of experimenting and playing around with them. But that's the gist of it, really. It's a really fun technique. And like I said, I've very much been exploring geometry nodes still. I wouldn't not dare to call myself an expert at all. But it's cool. Like, you get some really interesting looking things. Like, it's hard to do this with a displace modifier when you can, and now you can really get in and mess with the actual like positions and other things of of individual vertices and that kind of thing. And you know, let's just for shits and giggles throw on the wireframe. Come on. And obviously I would spend more time refining this. I'm just doing this very quickly just to get through it and to be able to show you the whole process. But they're a lot of fun to make, you know. And I don't want to say I'm milking this technique, but I'm definitely getting a lot of use out of it. Let's put it that way. Smooth shading, let's actually shade it flat. And the thing is with geometry nodes that I have noticed is you see a lot of these really cool demos of people doing everything in geometry nodes, and that's really great. I think it's awesome. And you know, if you have the capability of understanding the math behind it, then you're going to do so much. I've noticed that I just use it in combo with other modifiers, and sometimes I might even have 2 or 3 geometry nodes modifiers in the same stack with others in between, just doing simple things that I can't do with other modifiers. So it's both like a really great utility tool type thing, as well as a way to try stuff out and try stuff out in like a bit of a sandbox. So it's interesting. It's not perfect, this one, but obviously if you spend more time with it, you can massage it into whatever you want it to be. So yeah, I'll leave the geometry nodes setup open here so people can look at it a little bit more while I'm talking about it. And let's see if we see the output, and we can see, come on. So this little viewport toggle, or like display toggle, is you can get info from each individual node if you actually turn that on, which is really nice. So I found that learning geometry nodes is way easier with the spreadsheet, so you can actually see what the data behind it is doing than trying to just learn it from scratch and understand how things work. So yeah, but I'll definitely put some of this stuff in the course and have it like at bite-sized pieces so you can understand exactly what I'm doing and get into it a little bit and have fun with it. So all right, cool. So let's see. Next, what do you think? Can geometry nodes replace the particle system completely? Well, no, not yet. Obviously, the particle system can do a lot of stuff right now. I hope they don't abandon updating it. Geometry nodes just adds more new stuff. Sure, there's some stuff that you can do with geometry nodes that you couldn't do before, but I don't think don't look at it as a replacement for things. Just look at it as another tool in the toolbox because it just gives you more options, you know. Do, do, do. So takes away detail for sure. I think we're talking about the denoiser there for a little bit as well. When you want to add lights, you use emissive objects or actual lights. I'll always use lights first because they produce less noise. The moment you start adding emissive objects, you're going to be dealing with a lot of noise and fireflies and that kind of thing. They render slower, whatever. So I'll always try to do it with a light first, like an area light. And if I have to, then I might do it with objects. Yeah, to me, unless you want a hyper specific shape or texture in your light, in like an area light or whatever, there's no reason why you should be using a plane with an emission shader. It's not good practice because it will slow everything down and make a lot more noise than just an area light. And most of the time, if you're lighting stuff, area lights are just fine. For my workflow personally, anyway. Obviously, I don't know what you're doing exactly, but yeah, area lights are faster than emissive planes. So. What application is it? I'm assuming you're talking about the application I'm using. It's Blender, so it's free. Download it, try it out. It's pretty rad. So there's people explaining stuff, answering questions. About time. Yeah, I know it's been long. Geonodes, yay! Yeah, exactly. Cool to catch you live. Well, hello. Thank you for joining. I think we're at a lot of viewers. It's pretty wild. So I didn't expect like to post something an hour before I started and then get so many people join. So let me know if this is a better time for people. If I don't mind trying to stream during the day a bit more rather than at night. Yeah, if people are interested, that's super cool. So well, this way, smallest face cam ever. Yeah, yeah. I don't really believe in giant face cams. You're here for Blender, not necessarily for my face, I guess. But here, there we go. Here's my face. um, let's see. I lost my thing here. Weird geonode stuff sounds interesting. Yeah, it's fun. And actually to kind of go back to the stuff that we were talking about at the start, like if you look at these animations, really what's happening here is if you look at this one, for example, this is a looped cloth simulation. And then to get that sort of weird, fidgety look, it's again a looped cloth simulation, but with this exact geometry nodes trick on top, and now you get this really nicely moving geometry, and yet it's sort of glitchy inside. And I found that if you try and do something with modifiers or particles, the what is it? The position of the particles changes depending on the shape of your mesh. But with geometry nodes, it stays the same, so it kind of sticks to your mesh a little bit better. And I'm sure I could probably do it with particles as well, but because then we can use like the position and the distance and all that cool stuff, you can get these really interesting looking, moving, like freaky looking things, which is awesome. And I'll talk a little bit more about the simulation and how that was set up exactly before I move on to the next thing. But yeah, they're good fun. Like I've been having a lot of fun messing with this and exploring geometry nodes and just figuring stuff out really, honestly. So. Um, let's see. Cool. So more people. Weird John. Just yesterday, when a small fab posted about the GeoNodes Wrangler being ready for code review. Oh, that's good. That's really nice. Um, yeah, I only use like a few functions of the Node Wrangler, if I'm super honest, but it'd be cool to have more functionality. So that's great. Yes. Object info in a separate window. Yeah, basically you get all the information about all the data that's in your object in that window, which is super awesome about the spreadsheet. Um, it's basically a debug view. Yeah, I find that works really well for that. So, uh, hello, MF Pele. I've seen you before. Thank you for joining. Um, Hey, I just want to say you're a huge inspiration and big reasons why I learned 3D stuff myself. That's great to hear. Keep up the Blender stuff. It's always nice when people are inspired. Yeah, it's cool. I hope stuff like this keeps you going. um, I'm not gonna lie. Lately, the last couple of months, I've been hitting a few creative blocks here and there. Just being busy and trying to balance everything. So it's been interesting as well for me. Yeah. So is there documentation for 3.0 already? It looks at quite a lot of attributes in the geonodes available. Yeah, there's more stuff coming in, but I don't think the documentation is updated yet. That generally, as I understand it, gets updated before the release and the few weeks before, when all of the features have been frozen, which makes sense when you think about it. But yeah. Um, so yeah, geometry nodes. Yes. Are you always live about geometry nodes? Not really. Just showing stuff, I guess. I don't really understand the question 100% if I'm super honest. Sorry. And what is bunch of number for? So yeah, that as I said, the spreadsheet is to give you an idea of what's going on inside your mesh. It has all the different details of your mesh, which is great when you're using geometry nodes because it's really what you're doing. Even when you're just using modifiers and stuff, you're just manipulating the data inside the mesh. And once you wrap your head around that concept, then learning geometry nodes is goes a lot quicker. But it's just that concept that you need to kind of get your head around, and once that happens, it's all good. So, um, so here we go. Why is it set to default? I don't know which is set to default, to be too honest. So yeah, if you guys don't mind adding stuff in, adding some more information, where can I download more RAM to make this happen? Some super dodgy website, I'm sure. Uh, so Blender's Bob Ross. I don't know about that. I feel I don't think I'm at Bob Ross's level at all. But I appreciate the comment. So how do you make the fields post? I actually covered that in the beginning of the live stream, but it'll be up on YouTube, so don't worry. You can rewatch the start, or you can go back to the start if you prefer. But I go through the process. So how did you do the wavy animation? I'll do that now as a last thing after I've answered some more questions. Um, so I want to slice things up. So yeah, somebody going through RTMG on WingFox. That's awesome. And Tagma, yeah, though these guys, do I have a window here? I'm not gonna lie, I've learned a lot from them. And Tagma, they usually do do Houdini stuff, and I was learning some Houdini recently as well. But they've started to do some Blender stuff here as well, and yeah, a fair amount of the knowledge that I've gained is from their stuff. It's pretty cool. They do a lot of really nice tutorials. So Definitely be on the lookout for them. Really nice guys as well. I've met Moritz in real life. He's a really friendly dude. So they're all real cool people. But it's cool. A lot of the stuff that like you can do in Houdini is slowly starting to trickle its way down into Blender because you're starting to get access to that data, which is really awesome. So this time is really EU friendly, not gonna lie. Yeah, I know. It's better than doing it at night. And I find that at night, I used to do my streams at night because that's sort of my downtime, relaxed time. But ever since yeah, I became a dad last year, that relaxed time needs to stay relaxed time. I can't, if I do too much at night, then I'm super tired. So today I had randomly had some time because I'm waiting for feedback for a client. Or on feedback from a client. So I figured, why not? I might as well do a stream if I have some time this afternoon. But if you like this time, I don't mind trying to do more in the future. So will I upload this? Yes, this is going to be available after. No worries. Hello, Marlon. Thank you for your comment. Marlon is my brother. Cool. All right. So two more things I want to get through, right? Because I've been rambling on and long enough. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual simulation setup for these funky ones, and I'll talk a little bit about the Ruben Fro inspired point cloud stuff. So let's get into it. I'm just gonna make a new thingamabob, and really, if we just grab a plane. And just subdivide it 99 times. I should really make a button for this by now because so many of my projects start like this where I'm just like, subdivide 99 times, make a plane. So really all it is I just want to set up something for simulation. For the wider ones, really all I've done is just duplicate it and make it a little bit bigger. But in this case, I'm not going to bother with it. So what I'm going to do first is I want to play with two things for the cloth. So if you look at the waviness of the cloth, you might think that it's a lot of forces and stuff, but actually there's not a single force being used in these. This is all pressure and pinning within the cloth settings themselves, which is awesome. But to do that, I want to set up a vertex group first. So I'm going to set this to weight paint and then use the age-old trick, if you've seen the course, of using a texture for weights. So I'm just going to call this pin because I'm going to use this as a pin group. So pin, group add, turn up the fall off, and then let's throw a texture in here. And let's grab a distorted noise, maybe something like that. And we'll see how well that works. So now really all I've done is I've just created a not vertex paint, but a weight paint with a texture, and that I can manipulate that now. So to visualize it so you can follow along a little bit easier, I'm just going to throw in a displace modifier and throw that group in there so you can see exactly what's going on. I'm not going to use it for the cloth, but just so we can see exactly what we're doing and we don't have to always switch. I have made this feature request for oh so long. We've got vertex color preview in our viewport, but we really, really need weight preview in our viewport. So there's a post by me on right click select on the Blender community. Go upvote it because we really need it. It would be so great to just be able to see this. So what I want to do now with that texture I've set up, obviously I want to make this loop. So let's do 300 frames and we'll see how quickly this simulates, but it'll be decent enough. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this because I want to affect the texture with this this empty. So in my vertex weight edit modifier, and let me just pull this out a little bit so you can read a little bit better what's going on. I'm going to set the texture coordinates to object, and then I'm going to select this bad boy. And now these this weight paint is being driven by this object, which is nice. And if you want a really quick and dirty way to create a perfect loop of like a texture moving up or down or left to right, then what you could do is just rotate this on a certain axis. So I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis, set a single keyframe at the start, and then set it to 360, one frame after the last frame. And now you'll see as I play this, this loops perfectly, like there's nothing, yeah. like it's 9099. Let's put it that way. So what we can do now is actually play with this texture and look at it in real time. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And while it doesn't give you a perfect sort of linear pull down, because the reason why it sort of changes at the top and the bottom is the texture obviously is being projected somewhere out here and then it comes in, and because it's rotation, it's not 100% perfect. You could, if you really wanted to, set up two empties that are moving up and down that are equal distance between each other, the same distance that you're moving them, and then mix the two vertex groups together, and then you get a perfect sort of linear movement. I'm a really lazy person when it comes to this stuff, so this for me is good enough and it looks okay. So now we've got a little bit to work with. And really what I want to do is, rather than use the displace here, I'm going to add a cloth simulation. And in the cloth, so let's set the quality steps up a little bit. You can see by default, if I play this, nothing's going to happen because I have gravity disabled in my scene by default. I always do this because it just makes making abstract stuff easier. You don't have to turn stuff off. You can just get in there. And if you need it, then you could use it. But what's great about it now is if we go to the shape and we set this pin group to pin, now we have this dynamic vertex group, which is pinning the cloth. Unfortunately, this is not going to do anything, but we don't have to worry about that yet. Let's say if I just put in a wind force field just to illustrate it, I'm going to delete this again in a second, but just so you can see what's going on. If I now play this, and I'm going to set the wind to like a crazy amount so you can see exactly what it's doing. Now you can see it's pushing the cloth out, but you can see it's being pinned dynamically by that group that I just created. So it's a really great way to have those work together. Now, I just deleted the wind because, like I said, in the final version, there's no like forces or anything going on. So what I want to do is I'm going to leave this pin group set. I want to add pressure. So let's add a pressure of maybe like 1.5, and let's see what happens. Now you'll see the cloth is trying to push out because of the pressure, but we get this really nice, interesting movement going on because it's like trying to blow itself up, but being pulled back by the pin group. So you get a really nice interplay between the two of them. And really, when I do anything in cloth, these settings over here, these stiffness and damping settings, I turn them way down. So what you might think is the way these work is, let's say if you want more tension, yeah, the wording is a little bit weird because if you want more bending, you would think you would push the bending up, and if you want more shearing, you would push the shearing up, but it's actually the other way around. If you hover over them, it tells you how much the material resists X, so stretching, compression, shearing, bending, whatever. So if you want it to be really like over the top, flowy and stuff, you actually have to turn all of these down instead of up, which is beyond counterintuitive, but it's been like this forever. So I set these to like 0.1. And you can immediately see the effect it's going to have. The cloth is going to become way more wavy and it's going to push out really weird. We can counteract that a little bit by turning down the speed multiplier, and this will sort of turn down the speed of the simulation. And you can see already what's going on. It's starting to move, which is really cool. Now, there's two things I want to change. Well, more than two things, but there's at least one thing I want to do as well, is in the pin group. Right now, if we go into the weight paint, I want this edge to always stay. If we look at the animations here and we open them up, you can see the edge of it always stays in the same place. So I want to have that set up. So what I'm going to do in edit mode, I'm going to go into my settings here and I'm just going to assign that to the pin group. And now if we look, you can see it sort of stays the same. And just for completeness sake, normally I wouldn't let this override it. Normally I would have two separate groups, and actually let's just do it, then you can see exactly how it was done. So I'm going to call this one edge, assign this. So now we have an edge group and a pin group. And what I want to do is I want to do a vertex weight mix, and I want to add the edge to the pin. So vertex group A is pin. So if we go back to this group, I want to add the edge, and I want to make sure you can see vertex group, what is it, B? There we go. And what it's doing now is going to keep that edge pinned at all times, and the cloth is just going to be pushing out on the different parts. And you can see already it's creating a fairly interesting result. But now you say, how do you get the movement to be so extreme? Now this is where all the fun starts. So there's a couple of things. One of them is the stiffness. If you set the stiffness of the pinning to 0, it's going to push out way, way, way further. And it's interesting to see that now we get something that isn't pinned at all. So I just want to make sure my weight is still set correctly. Okay, yeah, we are getting it. So now you can see it's only really grabbing the, and even this effect is already interesting, but it's only really grabbing the very sort of top. If you look at the weight paint at the same time, you can see it's only being affected by anything that turns like 100% because I've turned the stiffness down. So it's a lot less, the pinning stiffness. So it's a lot less, whatchamacallit, what's the best way to put this? A lot less sensitive to the weights. So just to counteract that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the contrast up of the weight paint and maybe the brightness a little bit as well, just so we get a little bit more of those red spots. And then you'll see the pinning will start happening a lot more frequently. So if we go back to the object mode, come on, it's getting a little slow here. There we go. Now you can see that effect is starting to take hold. Now we're not quite there yet. It looks cool, but I want it to be a bit more extreme. So I'm going to up the pressure a little bit and see what happens. Or actually, I'm going to leave that the same for now. But another thing I want to do is the shrinking factor. Basically, whenever you pin something, the mesh or the cloth is going to kind of try to pull the mesh together or keep it about the same size. And if you want like something that's really tightly wrapped or pulled around something, you can push up the shrink factor so it like really tries to wrap itself around stuff. Or if you turn it to -1, it's going to billow out and get really crazy. So here you can see immediately what happens. The just by changing that, you get this really billowy over the top cloth, and then the parts are being pinned dynamically. So you get this really interesting, crazy movement to play around with. And this is where really all the fun lies, I think. I really like cloth when it's not behaving like normal cloth. I prefer it when it's kind of weird and crazy. And yeah, this pin stuff and stiffness and stretching stuff is really great. And it works. It's all of these, parameters working together, but you can immediately see what's going on. Now, for some of the people that have been around for a little bit longer, they know how I'm going to loop this. So I'm sorry if this is more stuff, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the simulation now for 600 frames so I can loop 300 of them. And I'll show you in a little bit. I'll show you now exactly how that's done. First, what I want to do is I want to add a keyframe modifier to my empty here. And if you've never used keyframe modifiers in the graph editor, over to the right in the side panel, you have a modifier called cycles. Hilarious every time, but hey, there you go. And what I can do now is that's going to repeat that motion that I've created. So repeat with offset, and then I'm going to repeat this one with the offset. And it's just going to repeat. You can see as I scroll through, it's just going to keep, the cloth's going to explode a little bit, but that's fine. But it's going to keep turning that at the same rate. So now I have the same texture being projected from frame 1 to 300 as from frame 301 to 600. So that's really where the secret lies. So let's see. Hopefully it does all 600 frames. So give it a second. And actually, there's something I need to do first because I don't think I enabled all the collisions. Yeah, so I need to enable self collision as well just to make sure that's in there. Let's bake. And this is going to take a lot longer. So yeah, normally I would enable self collisions, but I'm just going to turn them off for now, just so we can, so it's a little bit quicker. And I can actually do this within the time and do this live. It's a little bit more fun. So let's see. I'm gonna answer some questions while this is. So that Ruben Fro inspired point cloud thing you did was on Blender, sort of. Yes, it's part photogrammetry, part Blender. So yeah. So let's see. So an 06 is really unique. So yeah, I think that's this one. Where is it? Come on. I'm probably going to start seeing like a million copies of people doing this now as well. Come on. Why won't you work? Of course, when you want it to work, you know what? I'm just going to open the folder. It'll probably be quicker. Where are we? 06, and this is going to give me music. There we go. So this one it's the same technique, but I've just used really elongated polygons rather than using square polygons. I've used like really wide ones, and that just gives you really odd movement because it's trying to snap them back and the cloth sim doesn't always know what to do exactly. So you get these kind of weirder movements. And yeah, it's a case of like tweaking the texture of the pinning. You see there's a lot more pinned here than there is not, and that gives you that sort of feeling where it's just kind of pushing out rather than being pulled back in. So a lot of it is just finding that sort of technique and then just experimenting. So let's just save this real quick and let's call it untitled cloth, just so we don't lose progress in case of a crash. So now I've got the simulation going, and it's from 0 to 600 rather than 0 to 300. So how do we loop this now? Well, within Blender, you have to enable an add-on. If you type in PC2, you get the point cache format. And you could use this or MDD, I think, but I'm used to using this one. And if you just enable this, then you get a export point cache. And what this is going to do, and I'm going to turn convert to Y up, off, and frame 1 to 600. It's just going to export the animation of the cloth to something that isn't a simulation. It's just a separate file. If I look at my file manager here and go look in the temporary directory, then you'll see I didn't really give it a name, so it just grabbed the name of the let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Not really, but there you go. The name of the file. And it's exporting. Oh, it was already done. So now I have this, I can reference this sort of like an alembic, but it's not able to handle geometry that changes over time. So this only works for this. In this case, it works because the plane stays the same amount of polygons the entire time, which is cool. So what I can do now is just duplicate this, and I'm going to turn the first one off. And the second one, I'm going to throw off everything. I'm going to delete the cloth modifier and the vertex weight. I don't need any of that stuff. I just need that plane. And then I'm going to add a mesh cache, set it to PC2, so point cloud. There we go. Accept. And now when we play this, we actually have that same animation playing just fine. But we can scrub through it, and it's just reading from that file. And yeah, works just fine, which is really nice. So now the cool thing is we can just duplicate this modifier, and what we can do is actually in time remapping we can offset it 300 frames. So that means this one's going to start at frame 301 and end at frame 600, but the one under it is doing sort of the normal time. So these are going to be fairly similar, and then really all I'm going to do is towards the end here, I'm just going to do it very rough. I'm going to animate the influence down. And you might get a little bit of squishiness, but because, you know, it's all a case of like making sure that you don't really notice. And if we play this, you don't really notice it. And you can always mess with the keyframes and the timing and the easing and things. But now we have a perfectly looping cloth simulation. And the cool thing is now if we bring in that geometry node stuff, so I'm just going to steal that from the previous file. So I'm going to do file, append, go to the untitled blend that I saved here earlier, and go to node tree, geometry nodes. Where is it? And this is, oh yeah, that's fine. So you can see it also brings in that cone that we created earlier. So we can just hide that in the viewport. It's fine. And now what we can do is just set this to geometry nodes 001. And now we've brought that same system into Blender. You can see it's been duplicated here, and we might want to add even more subdivisions, and it might start getting a little crashy or weird after a while. But now we have that exact thing going on. And let's save this again before we add the wireframe modifier. And this is going to take a while because I'm at 2,500 faces, 2.5 million faces. We'll see. It might crash on this one, but that's fine. But really, all I'm just doing now is adding the wireframe, and that's it. So here you can see how, figuring something out in geometry nodes can be really useful. And I'm just going to turn the subdivisions down a little bit so we have a little bit less geometry. There we go. Turn that down to 3. And then turn this off, set it to relative, maybe something like 0.5, and then we turn this back on. And I really wish there was a way to add modifiers in a disabled state, but yeah, it is what it is. So now it's just a case of bringing the scale back up, and then we're going to get seeing that really weird pattern again. Maybe bringing the scale down and the density way down. Let's see what happens when we decrease this a little bit. There we go. And now we get sort of an interesting looking mesh. So you can see there's a lot of options there, and I've just scratched the surface on this. I just found this one random node, this attribute proximity node, and I've just been running with it for weeks now. Just kind of exploring what you can do with it and how far you can push it. So once you start animating this now, you'll get that sort of glitchiness, and I'll try and scrub through it frame by frame, but it's going to take a long time. And you retain sort of the feeling of the cloth doing its thing, but then, it's at the same time, it's still getting the glitchiness of the geometry nodes, and this is taking forever to load. So you see, if I go to the next frame, it'll jump a little bit, and then yeah, you get that kind of cool effect. But the curling of the cloth is still in there. It's really, really awesome. So that's a quick breakdown of those. Very, very quick. So it's 2:20 now, something like that. So I've got another half hour or so to talk about a little bit other stuff. So let's see. I'm gonna have a very quick look at the questions. Thank you for your Mantis Dark theme that we've been using for a couple of years, and it'll stop. Oh, that's nice. Nice. I'm glad that they use it. I haven't updated it in a while because I've switched over the GNOME now. I don't know if it's the Blender theme that you're talking about or the desktop theme, but like I've been using a different one for GNOME, which is really nice as well. I can't think of that name immediately. Oop, extra desktop. That was unnecessary. But it's cool. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Is there a specific reason why you like black and white so much? Most of your renders are black and white. I don't know. I just like it. I don't know if there's like a hyper specific reason to it, but it lets me focus a lot more on just lighting and playing with very moody lighting, and I feel like, yeah, it accentuates things a little bit better. I don't know. I just enjoy it. There's no like specific reason for it. And it's not like I set out to do something either specifically in black and white or color. Sometimes I might switch over in the middle of a project, but generally I start lighting before I start shading. And I think it's because of that, because in Blender, all of the default shaders are just white if you don't have anything on there. So when you start lighting stuff and there's no materials on it, you just get a white mesh on a black background. And maybe even it's laziness. I don't know. But I just like the way that looks. So that's why I tend to do that rather than, rather than go for color. Oh, I like making colorful stuff too. But I find that I usually switch. I do black and white for a while. And then when I make colorful stuff, I go like super colorful. It's almost like I'm compensating. It's really weird. But yeah, I don't know. Wireframe even is set to default. Yeah, they should really change that. Will we have a new tutorial like RTMG but for geometry nodes, also using modifiers? So I said this earlier, I'm planning in the future, I don't have an exact timeline yet, but to do an update for RTMG. It's going to be a free update, just another hour or two, maybe 3, depending on how much I can pack in, just with the stuff that has been updated since Blender 2.83, especially with 2.9b3 coming out fairly soon. It'll be nice to be able to jump from LTS to LTS, kind of show you what's improved and what you can look out for. There's going to be a fair amount of geometry nodes in there as well, just to do this. And this exact scene will probably be one of the projects, so you're getting a pretty good preview. Um, cool. I like these effects, but as soon as the math starts to be involved, my brain shuts off, and I'm a software engineer. I should understand this. Yeah, I'm I'm sad I didn't pay more attention to math class, honestly. uh, Question: how do you see geometry nodes in the future? I said before, another tool in the toolbox. It's going to be really awesome. Hi, I was one of your students a long time ago. That's great to hear. Well, glad to have you here. Um, I think I saw this course on Wing Fox. Is that legitimate? I don't know why, but it feels off. No, it is legitimate. They contacted me about it for a while back, but the way they do things is they like to make their own promos, which is weird because they kind of cut it from the one that I made, which makes it seem a little bit off. But it is the full course. Uh, I always prefer that you would buy it on Blender Market, not because there's anything wrong with the other, because it's also on Flip Normals as well as on WingFox. But the cool thing about Blender Market is a small portion of the course when you buy it gets donated to the Blender Institute. So preferably, if you can buy it there on the Blender Market, but honestly, it's the same on all three platforms. So. And I think WingFox, they do timed releases of the different parts, and I don't really have any control over that. It's also something they didn't really mention, so it's a little bit annoying, but they don't have any bad intentions or anything like that. So it is the full course. It should be. And if you ever have any issues with it, my email's on my website. You can just contact me and I can help you out. We can figure something out together. So, um, doo, doo, doo. Where are you located? I am in Belgium. Um, there's people that already have answered that. I totally missed this. Just save a subdivided plane next to the default cube in the startup file. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I should do that. Update it without additional payment. Yeah, it'll be a free update. Mainly because I think I don't know if I'll ever do a second free update. I honestly doubt it because I think one free update is really cool. I'm mostly doing it as a thank you because it's been successful beyond my imagination, honestly. And as a thank you to everybody that supported me, I want to at least update it for the newest LTS. So you have a lot more information for the next year or so moving forward, and a bit of a primer into geometry nodes, which will always be good for the future, I would say. So. Now I want to make a face appear through that cloth sim. You could. So in geometry nodes, there is a attribute sample texture node. So you could do it with the texture if you really wanted to. And I don't know why I'm doing this in the thing. It's going to turn off the wireframe and maybe turn off the subdivision surface here. But you could do that with a texture. So if you have a black and white texture of a face, you could use a very similar, sort of targeting positioning thing. Yeah, you could probably rig it together with, unfortunately, a little bit of math, but I'm not going to be able to do that live because I'm nowhere near awake or smart enough yet with geometry nodes to do that. But you could do that, or you could use a face as a distance. So you could have a geometry nodes in here that populates that original distance value from the face, and then use a second geometry nodes to pull that in after the cloth sim. You could do so much cool stuff, like really, really great. So yeah. Genius of starting simple, yes, for sure. Would this still loop perfectly with self-collision enabled? Yeah, so yeah, I cleared that up. Hey Sharon, thanks for joining. So how does one catch up on exploring newer features and incorporating it into their style? Also, some commercial applications of your work. I just really look at the release notes of the Blender versions. Honestly, I watched Blender Today on and off, where Pablo goes through all the new stuff that's happening, and every now and then something's just going to pique my interest and kind of makes me wonder, like, oh, could I use it for this or that? So I don't really have a methodical approach to it, but I do tend to try to keep up as much as I can. I don't keep up as much as before I had a kid, though. That's really, honestly, I was able to like tap into everything and just follow on YouTube or social media a little bit more, but it doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. What's the name of the image viewer that you use? It's called G-Thumb. So G like the letter G, and then thumb like the appendage. It's only on Linux, I think, though, but it's really nice because it has just enough controls to where you can like scale and rotate and crop stuff and easily resize things for different things. So it's really nice when you make a really big render for like print or whatever, and then you can resize it down without having to open up like Photoshop or GIMP or whatever. So let's see. Yeah, the rest of the questions I'll answer a little bit later because I don't want people to be staring at a blank screen. So let's talk a little bit about the final thing, and that's those point clouds. And this is still very much a work in progress, which is why I've only posted like one or two things. You can see some of the screenshots here. They're interesting, but they're extremely slow and heavy to work with. So I'll take you through the current sort of general workflow, and then we'll see if we can, yeah, I can show any of the files. So basically what I've been doing is I spent money on a 3D camera, like a 360 camera, and I've basically just been running through the woods with it. So here you can see me. So I feel like a wizard, honestly, because I've got this monopod and the camera is affixed to the top. And then it's like I have the staff with me. Like I said, I feel like a wizard in the woods. It's kind of cool. But basically, I'm just walking through the woods with the 360 camera on top. And then I'm using the 360 video as a source of for photogrammetry, which I'm still trying a lot of stuff. One of the main issues that you get is if I just pause this, the compression on this 360 video is god awful. So yeah, there's a lot of chromatic aberration. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it produces sort of really wishy-washy results, but in their own way, they're kind of interesting. So if I open, oh, I don't have any of them processed, unfortunately. So I've been using the trial version of Metashape Pro, because I have the regular one. So it's edgesoft.com. Oh, no. There we go. So you've got the regular Metashape, which I have, which is $179, but then you've got the professional edition, which is $3,500. And man, I'm processing as many of these point clouds as I can in the 30 days that I have this trial going, because I'm really not in a position to pay this much money for one piece of software. But the reason I'm not using the regular edition is the professional edition has support for 360 cameras. So what does that mean? Is I can't, let's see, can I, there we go. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing all of these, and from that, yeah, MP4, I'm just extracting all the individual frames and I'm throwing them into Metashape Pro. And the reason I have to use the Pro version is because that's the one that supports 360 cameras, which is kind of frustrating because when you go looking online, you see that the standard edition at one point also supported them, and then they took it out and made it exclusive to the professional version, which is kind of lame if you ask me, like pulling stuff out. And then so I'm going to send them an email to see if I can't get on the older version of the standard edition, because I had an active license at the time. But yeah, we'll see. So for now, I'm just using the trial to see if it even works. But yeah, even if I want to upgrade it, I think it's just the same price, but yeah, minus what you already paid, which is like, come on, guys. But then again, that being said, I've had this license for 5 or 6 years, and I've never had to pay for an upgrade. So, you know, they are good dudes when it comes to that. I just think it's a little bit weird that they took out the functionality. And I understand, because up until a few years ago, at some point, I do understand, because up until a few years ago, 360 cameras were really expensive, but they've really come down in price, and it's just an interesting way of doing things. And shout out to Ruben Fro, by the way. Let's see if we just go to Twitter real quick, and if we go, I'm sure he posted something at one point. Where is he? Where is he? Here he is. He does a bunch of stuff with point clouds in real time in Unity. Really, really cool things. And he had sent me an AD level article that he contributed a while back. Creating immersive experiences from point data, and I'll copy that into the chat as well so you guys can have a look at it, where he describes this process, and I took some cues from that, but he also uses a 360 camera. Only thing is he's actually not a dum-dum and is able to do some programming to align these a little bit better, which is why he's getting really nice, interesting point clouds, and I'm just using software without being able to program or align anything, which means what was I going to say? I just have to do with whatever comes out of Metashape Pro. Now, to show you what comes out of Metashape Pro, it's a PLY file that you export. I'm not going to go through the photogrammetry process because unfortunately that takes too long. But if you've ever done any photogrammetry, it's import the photos, align the photos, and build a point cloud from the photos. That's the simple version. But I've talked about it in the past, so you can definitely, I'm sure it's in one of the streams. So you can import a PLY file standard in Blender, but the problem is some of these point clouds are between, I would say, somewhere between 10 and 150 million points. And even the 10 million points ones, Blender is going to struggle with like crazy. So there's this add-on on the Blender market, which is called Point Cloud Visualizer. And I have to still send him a message about something because I want to ask him about implementing a feature. And it's specifically used for importing point clouds and stuff. And that can actually show you a viewport preview without utterly crashing your system. And I'm able to use this then to produce a mesh from it. So let me just bring in a point cloud. So there's multiple ways. I'm just going to go PLY file, and then I'm going to have a look at my projects here and have a look. So I have a whole bunch of clouds already processed, and I'm going to grab one that isn't too big just so for speed's sake. And grab one I haven't used yet. So this one's 420 megabytes. So just for the meme value alone, we can grab it. So you can see what that looks like when it comes in. And you can see this is 15 million points. If I tried to import this into Blender, it would just crash because it's trying to create a mesh with points. And the point cloud visualizer is just, if I erase these, it's just an object that is able to draw those points. And you can see how quick it is. It's really, really nice to use. So then it's just a case of aligning the point clouds. There we go. And you can see this is a pretty decent one where I had to step under a branch. But the funny part is because I'm at the bottom of that 360 video, I was wearing a red jacket that day. So you get these weird glimpses of like my face and stuff, which makes it even better. I think it's hilarious. And it's always like under the ground and stuff. So it's kind of cool. But basically using this, this add-on, you can render from the add-on directly, and then you get this view that you can render the way you want. But I want to be able to use things like depth of field, motion blur, and I want to be able to use it as a mesh to do stuff. Now, I can convert this to a mesh, but the problem is this is 15 million points. So even if I just grab a mesh that's only triangles, which I've been using so far, it's going to be a 15 million, 15 million face mesh, which is just going to bring Blender to its knees, and it might even crash the add-on. So generally what I'll do in here, there is it's a filter, and then you can split it into cells. So just looking at this, the size of the let's see the size of the thing here. So that would be roughly 10, 20 meters. So if I split this up into cells of, let's say, 20 meters on the X and Y and like 100 on the Z, it's going to split this up into multiple objects. And it's going to take a second. There we go. And I'm going to turn this original one off. And now you can see I have one that's 2 million polygons, 1 million, 3, 4 million, 7 million, 11,000, and 5,000. So now I've got these different parts, and I'm going to turn these other two off. And let's just grab one now. That is, let's say 2 million. I think this one should be usable. Let me just grab it. There we go. So that's like this part over on the side here. And what I can do now is convert this to an equilateral triangle. And what I want to do is I want to grab, I'm not going to use UV or the other one here, but I'm going to align these to the normal of the points. So those points actually have a normal value as well, which is really cool. And if you leave the colors turned on, it's going to map each, it's going to give each one of those little triangles the point color in the vertex paint. So you can actually use that for shader. So if I now convert this, and this is going to take a second as well, I found that I can convert roughly up to about 10 million-ish points, and then everything just starts crashing. But 10 million can take like 20 minutes to convert. So hopefully I can talk to the guy that creates this add-on and maybe ask him if there's a way to add a little bit of an extra toggle in the convert that says split it up into 2 million points and then just convert each 2 million, and that'll be a lot faster. Blender tends to be a fair bit faster with like 10 objects of 2 million points than one object with like 20 million. So it's just getting there. But you can see this stuff takes forever, and I'm still working out the proper workflow and I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with all this data. Because if you look at the data here that I was talking about, so the videos themselves are, about 500 megabytes a minute, which isn't too bad. But then the point clouds, there's some here that are like 4 gigabytes, 3 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes. Like those are the really heavy ones where I walked around a lot. So it's hard to get through. And then I have some tests I can show you at the end that are even a little bit more that are already animated. They're just camera fly-throughs, but you get some idea of what I'm doing with them. So this is still converting, unfortunately. There we go. So now what's happened, I'm going to turn off all the other ones. Now we get this patch that can be rendered in cycles. So let's just add a point light or something in here. And you can see it already created the where are we, shader for us. So if you look at the shader editor, if we select this, you can see all it is just a diffuse shader with a color in here, which is the vertex color that it created with all of those things in it, which is really nice. So I'm going to just grab that point light and crank it up a little bit so you can see. And now you get this really interesting look. And I'm rendering this with cycles. And I can tell you right now, Cycles is pretty quick at rendering this stuff because really all it is just some triangles and a diffuse shader. But that means I can actually use this to render other stuff. So if I just grab a camera and turn on depth of field, now I can start using all the tools that I'm used to render this stuff. So if I want to have, the ones up here in focus and maybe bring down thing, you can get these really, really interesting looking renders just because you get the feeling of this like natural stuff, but it's still points, and kind of like playing with that. And I'm not gonna lie, like I'm heavily influenced by what Ruben is doing, and the last thing I want to do is rip him off, but he's doing some cool stuff, and I'm trying to figure out what way I can do something similar. So this is about how far I've gotten. So I'll show you the fly throughs, which are kind of fun. Which I've been working on for a while. But again, these are just rendered tests. They're not anywhere near being finished. I still want to figure out some stuff. Like, for example, one great little trick that I can already show you is with these selected. If you add a smooth modifier, you could use vertex groups and stuff to smooth different parts. But also, if you set the smooth modifier to just the regular and you add repeat, you can make the triangle smaller. But if you set it to a negative factor, it will actually make those triangles bigger. So I still have control after the fact of the triangles. And you can see the look drastically changes depending on the size of the points. So if I bring them in and make them smaller again, you can see this already has like so much stuff going on, and it's just a mesh, and that's where all this stuff comes in, because now we can use displace modifiers, geometry nodes, whatever. Like I've been toying with the idea of maybe using a solidify, but the problem is this is a 2 million polygon mesh, so anything that I do is going to take forever. But now we have actual sort of little boxes, so it's going to look a lot more wavy. So now when we render it, and give it a second again to Yeah, let's see, to process everything. Then again, we're going to get a completely different look. And the idea is to start playing with that stuff and to see how far I can push it. But yeah, whenever you start adding modifiers, the render time shoots up because it needs to process all that data. But it's still interesting way of doing stuff. So this one is loaded, and I'm just going to load up another one in the background so we can look at them. So you can stay over there while you load everything. I should have enough RAM to be able to show all these, but here you can see this is just like lateral movement between, is it lateral? I always forget which one's which. But you can see I'm just moving through a couple of these point scans pushed together. Because they're so noisy and gritty and weird. Yeah, don't mind the flashes. I was rendering them in Cycles X with like a funky version. That's on my end. But you can see, because it's a mesh, I can just loop them. So this becomes a perfect loop of this really weird disintegrated forest. And yeah, some of this stuff is research for a big live show thing that I'm going to do with my brother towards the end of the year. But it's just been fun because it's like, when does it become like unreadable, and like when, like I said, don't mind the flashes, but when does it become no longer a forest and just points? And like I'm trying to find the balance between that, and there's no other animation going on here yet. Like once you start pushing animation into the points, doing that kind of stuff, it's going to get really cool. So hopefully, there's more to come, but like I said, I'm still at early stage of this stuff. Here's another one that I created not too long ago, and I'm going to load up the third one because I've only got like 3 render tests right now. And no, not this, but I want to load it. Is that the same one? Or this is a different one. No, this is a different one, but it's not quite as good, but that's okay, just for completion's sake. So that can load in the background, and then we've got this one. Let's start this from the beginning. So you see I'm just moving through them, and I'm using like in Cycles, you can use, and in Eevee, I think you can use the distance from the camera as like a black to white point. I'm mapping that. And again, don't mind the flashes. That's just Cycles X behaving weird because it's like a super early version. But you can see how interesting it is. Like this is just a perfect loop flying through this, simulated forest almost. And you can see some of the sky in there. Like I haven't done really a lot of filtering on the point clouds either, so it's still very rough. And I'm just trying to find my way around it. But immediately you get really interesting results. Only downside of these is like trying to show these on Twitter is going to be a nightmare because the compression is just going to destroy everything. So I'm just going to let the final few frames cache out here. And here you can see the trying to put in some basic movement. Again, it's just tests, nothing final, but this one is a bit more disintegrated, so you start kind of losing the feeling of the forest, or like you start losing sort of being able to pick out the individual elements, but you still get the feeling that you're in nature somehow. And I think that's where the sort of the interesting stuff here lies. Like I like trying to capture, because trying to capture forest through photogrammetry is so hard, because everything's moving in the wind, and yeah, there's so much detail. It's really hard to do, and I'm amazed by getting these frankly low quality 360 videos. And it's unfortunate because the camera I bought is really nice. I really enjoy using it, but I really think a lot of these manufacturers should start upping the bit rates for these 360 cameras because it's just horrible. It's all mushy and weird. But even still, there's some stuff in there. It's able to match them, so we'll see. But it's kind of fun. But this point cloud visualizer tool, the interesting part about it is you can also create point clouds from objects. So I'm going to look into that as well a little bit more because I haven't done that yet. So if we just hide this one here real quick, little triangles. So if you have, say, a monkey, and it's just subdivider, shader smooth. Now what we could do is, oh man, I haven't done this yet. So is it generate? Yeah. So let's say I want 100,000 point cloud. I can generate this from Suzanne. And now I have a point cloud. Yeah, that's on Suzanne, but you can see I could actually bring in other assets. bring in assets that I've made in the past, like maybe a tree or something like that, and then point cloud those and mix them with the stuff that I've captured. And like, this is a whole new thing opening up. You can see that I'm pretty excited about it. But again, I'm very far away from anything like, yeah, what's the best way to put it? Anything sort of final, but it's cool. Like, this is what it's all about, right? Finding new techniques, exploring stuff, just kind of being happy and checking things out. So that's about it. Yeah, I'll answer a few last questions, and I'll actually do it with my face. There we go. So you don't have to look at an empty Blender screen. But yeah, I hope you all had a great time. Did another, what is it, hour 45 minutes, hour and a half, or almost 2 hours. So if you have any last questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm gonna start wrapping up. And if you want to go, then go. It's all good, obviously. Thanks for joining. But yeah, let's see. So yeah, somebody asked the image viewer. The other image viewer that I use for viewing image sequences is called MR viewer. I figured I would just add that in so MR and then viewer. Viewer. There we go. So this is the name, and it works really nicely. So if you just want to see, I don't need to start the download. Thank you. If you just want to see, yeah, your image sequences or your EXR sequence or whatever, I can recommend that one. And DJV is another good one. So, so I bought your RTMG course for more than a year, approximately. Man, I learned so much. It helped me for so many projects. I haven't finished completely yet. Dope course. Oh, awesome. Well, I'm glad you really enjoyed it. That's great. Oh, yeah. So here you can even see exactly what I was talking about. That's funny. So just arrived. Gonna wait for the VOD. Yeah. Some people arrived pretty late. Explain the dynamic color for on the WG04. So 04 would be, let's switch back to the desktop. Be this one, I think. Okay, so this one, it's not actually color. I'm just using the same vertex weight that I'm using to pin the cloth with. I'm also using in the geometry node setup to instance little cones or things I think they were. So it's actually geometry that you're seeing, and it's not actually a texture. So that's the cool thing about geometry nodes. You can use that same data that you're already using to drive something else. You can bring that back in and then push it even further. So that's really really cool. So it's actually just, yeah, like a normal, I guess, the thing geometry nodes was initially designed for, just a scattering system that uses the same weight group as the pinning for the cloth, basically. I hope that answers your question well enough. So, 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 and Tagman, Aaron Dale have been really breaking down the GeoNodes math for me. Yeah, they're both really great, great resources. So David says, really appreciate tutorials and openness about your process. You're very welcome. And I'm going to move the chat up here so it looks a little bit like I'm looking at you guys a little bit more, so I'm not off in the distance somewhere. Okay, you did a tutorial and then bought the course. That's awesome. That's great to hear. Mitch, you speak French or Flamand or only English? I speak English, I speak Flemish, and I speak shitty French. And that's about it. But yes, I am from Belgium, so I guess we kind of have to. So yeah, from Belgium, we're teaching lighting at Sintra. Oh, that's a blast from the past. That's a while ago. Wow. Well, cool to see you here. So thanks for joining. So thanks for the suggestions. How many years have been using 3D and did you go to university? So I get this question a lot. So I think I've been doing CG professionally now for 11-ish years, 11, something like that. And I went to college before that, which was okay. I learned a lot of the basics, but not a lot of advanced stuff. I didn't really go to like a hardcore 3D school. It was more like a general tech stuff. So I did web design and video and 3D and all kinds of stuff. And it's fun because, it gave me a lot to think about afterwards. And I only honestly ever only started appreciating it like a couple of years ago when I was like, I build my own website, I can film stuff, I know my way around, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the things that I do now, I sort of had a first thing in college for. So yeah, I mean, it's good. But I don't think if you want to do 3D professionally, I don't think going to university is like a hard requirement anymore because there's so much stuff you can learn online. Yeah. So. Um, but yeah, I'm learning 3D itself. So a couple of years through college, I think I started around when I was, man, 15, 16, maybe something like that. Maybe even earlier, probably even earlier, but on and off, like only really doing it a lot the last, I would say 15 years or so, maybe something like that, 13 years. It's only then that I started taking it seriously, but yeah. Did a lot of Photoshop and stuff back in the day, Photoshop, After Effects, that kind of thing. So, um, hmm. So is that how a four-dimensional being would see our world? So third mode on, you're walking on a path through the woods. You just jump through the woods with no path for even more interesting footage. Watch out for the witches. Yeah, the thing is, I'm walking on a path. I've been going off paths and stuff as well. But the software needs like a continuous stream to be able to match all those different frames. The biggest problem is if you start kind of flailing about wildly, the compression completely goes to crap on the what you would call it on the video, and then you get like even worse results. So I have to, like, it's almost like I'm doing this religious procession because I'm holding this stick in front of my face with a camera just above my head. I'm walking like super slowly through the woods. So all the people walking through the woods, walking their dogs and stuff, they're looking at me and they're just like, this dude is, I don't know what he's on, but like he's out there. So I'm still like getting the best, figuring out the best way to capture these for the most part. So yeah, again, I might do more stuff in the future. I recently got a drone as well, and I got my drone license, and I just need to finalize my what is it, my insurance stuff, and then I can start flying a bit more. And I'm gonna try see if I can scan stuff with the drone, if I take pictures and that kind of thing. There's a lot to think about in the next over the next summer, so that's gonna be fun. I'll have a good excuse to be outside a lot. So, let's see. If I recall correctly, Radiohead once made a whole video with point cloud data some 5 or 10 years. Yeah, they've always been way ahead of the curves with video and like 3D stuff. Fun fact, if you want to talk about why I got into 3D, a big source of inspiration back in the day when I was younger were Linkin Park, the band. They always had really cool videos doing all kinds of stuff, and yeah, always using technology and new technology and stuff, and I always really liked that. So it was definitely one of many sources of inspiration. So for scan, I tested reality capture, and the result is so good. It's free to use, but when you export your model, you need to pay for it. It's not so expensive. Yes, I've looked at reality capture as well. It used to be very expensive, and now that Epic has bought it, it's a lot better, but it doesn't work on Linux. And my main workstation only has Linux on it, doesn't have any Windows on it. So if I want to use the full power of my computer, I need something that's compatible. And I'm not going to install Windows just to use one application. I really don't like Windows. I try to avoid it if I can. So, but it is good. Reality capture is really good. Ian Hubert, yeah, somebody's saying here Ian Hubert uses as well. It's true. It is for like regular photogrammetry. It's really, really great. So, what an amazing live stream. Thank you. Just discovered this, going to rewatch from the beginning. All right, cool. I'll have fun. Looks a great environment disintegration effect. Not going to lie. Yeah. So, scalded into emerged by distance. So, somebody here in Flemish. Yeah, you could do all kinds of stuff. Like the point clouds, once you have them as a mesh, you can start going a little crazy. Some Horizon Zero Dawn vibes on the point clouds. Yeah, I haven't played it yet. I've been wanting to play it for the longest time, but I haven't gotten around to it. So it'll be cool to see if there's stuff in there like that. I'm definitely interested to see kind of Matrix environment effect. Yeah, Benjamin Bardou uses this technique. It's cool, mixed with pixel sorter and some other glitch. Okay, I haven't heard about this guy, so let me I'll open the desktop here so people can have a look. Benjamin Bardou. If I could spell it properly now. Oh, yeah, that looks cool. Yeah, so definitely that kind of stuff as well. I think I might have seen this stuff pass by. That's really cool. Yeah. I don't want to get any in trouble for copyright stuff, so I'm not going to show it too long, but definitely interesting vibes. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. All right, so let's see. Final questions here. Really great live stream. Learned a lot of stuff. Thanks a lot. Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for your time and knowledge. Well, thank you for your time and knowledge. I mean, people are suggesting cool stuff in the chat as well, so that's cool. It was great. Awesome. Hey, can you see this? Yes, I can see this, Mr. Onyx. Let's see. Thanks for the stream. Well, thank you all for being here. Could you explain a little bit how the weird screen pixel artwork? Oh, this one? Yeah, it's really lame. Oh, I don't know where it went. This one, it's just a picture of my screen. I was rendering something and the renders didn't really pan out. I was messing around with the thin film shader in LuxCore render, and I just started taking, I have a macro lens, so I started taking macro photos of my screen, and that's where all the pixels come from. And if you zoom into them, oh man, how did I even call that project? I don't even remember. Was it in here? Yeah, I think it's in here. Those the smaller ones. I need the full resolution one. Yeah. So here, when you start looking, you can actually see the individual, like LED or what is it, pixels of the monitor, the red, green, and blue pixels. So it's just a picture of my screen while I was rendering something. I'm not gonna act like I reinvented the wheel here, but I just like the way it looked. I was just messing around, like I was waiting for a render and messing around with my camera and just started, taking pictures, and turned out it looked pretty cool. So that's it. And like it looks like super motion graphicsy, but really it's just the pixels of the monitor. Like that, yeah, I haven't really done anything special there. And wow, maybe I should show my desktop like an asshat. So sorry about that. I was explaining away and I wasn't even showing you guys. So you can see, if I look at the large size pictures here, you can see, like I said, the individual RGB pixels. Yeah, the thing was covering my chat, so I didn't see it. Yeah. So let's see. The last couple questions, and I'm gonna head out. Will you work on another course? So I'm going to do a free update for RTMG first. I said that at the start. So if you want to know more about it, I would say check the stream. Yeah, it was a long time ago. I wonder if you still remember me. Well, without a name, I don't know, if I'm completely honest. So, but I probably do. If I know your name, I'll probably remember who you are. So thank you everybody for all the nice things. Which camera do you use for streaming? It is a Sony A6400. That is affixed just above my monitor there. So what would you suggest for an academic researcher specialized in computer graphics? I don't know. There's so much stuff. Yeah, I don't know. That's a pretty broad question. I'm afraid I don't have an answer ready for you on that one. If you know about computer graphics, man, if you want to get involved with Blender, maybe looking at Eevee and cycles, maybe you could contribute code to that. That would be really cool. I don't know. It's hard to say. That's a really left field question, and I'll be honest, I'm like really tired after these 2 hours. So, yeah, sorry if I don't have the best answer for that one. Cool. So everybody's saying, yeah, pixel sorting is fun. Yeah, for sure. Haven't figured out how to use it in video. Images are fine, but the video part is more appealing. There is a pixel sorter plugin for After Effects, so you could look at that. So yeah, So yes, yes, yes. Do I always also use Houdini in your in my workflow? Sometimes I've done one set of things with Houdini before, but yeah. The thing with Houdini is I do very similar stuff in Houdini than I can do in Blender, but I'm able to push the poly count way higher. But the problem is that if you have like a 100 million polygon object, getting that back into Blender is a nightmare, is almost impossible. So my limit is that I'm able to do stuff in Houdini, but then I'm not able to get it back into Blender. And the reason I want to get it back into Blender is because I'm just so used to cycles, and I'm not very used to mantra or anything, and it will take me forever. But I've been experimenting with it. It's fun. I'll probably learn more in the future, but I'm not like super deep diving into it just yet. But it is really cool. But I'll admit that learning some Houdini and then getting into geometry nodes really helped just to get like the general idea of things. So yeah. So hello to our Indonesian friend in the chat as well. So hey, do you think it's worth making Blender the only tool for motion graphics animation? No, just use whatever is cool, whatever you think you could use. Yeah. Kyle says only caught the end, but thanks for the stream. Well, you could catch the full thing once we're done. So here. So thank you for the kind words, Tiago. I'm glad you enjoy the stuff. Oh, Reza, awesome! You did the great Chewbacca impression. If I'm right, if I have the right person. I remember those Chewbacca impressions in class. They were good. Cool. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up. And yeah. Yeah, I know After Effects costs money. Yeah. Free version of Resolve. I don't know. I don't know if it's in there. I haven't checked it yet. But if you want to get really technical, there are ways to do it in processing, the like the creative coding thing. And you could probably put all the different frames in there and then just process each separate frame and then output it. So that could be another way to go. And on GitHub, there's people that have just ready-made code for pixel sorting in there. So maybe with a bit of tweaking, you could do it in processing. All right, cool. So last one, thank you for that point cloud walkthrough. The whole stream has been packed with game-changing information. Cool. Had to pause it in a few places. Yeah, no worries. So it'll be up after the thing. So with that done, I think that's me for today. Whew, another long stream, but thank you to everybody who joined, and thank you for everybody who supported me on the course as well in the past year. It's been wild. So yeah, that's it for me. Let me see, where's my end stream button here? All right, cool. I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever, and I'll see you guys soon. So peace.